Yeah, my name's Gary Alesbrook. I'm a trumpet player. I've been doing session work for the last 12 years, I think now. So, recording-wise, I've been just been working on the new Kasabian album, which is their fourth album, and had a pleasure at the end of last year of doing my first film soundtrack as well, which was the new Colin Farrell, Keira Knightley film, and also in the studio with Noel Gallagher next week on his solo project, which is going to be released in September. So that's all fun.
That's quite a wide variety of different activities.
That's what I like. It's a film called London Boulevard, and it came out in the cinema, and it's that was about 2 months ago. So that was a new thing for me, which was great, working with video and playing at the same time. So it was all, a hard experience, but very, very good. Preparation-wise, I just play as much as I possibly can. I think it's different for different instruments. For trumpet, you've got to have the stamina there, and that means just playing as much as you can. So if I know I've got a gig coming up, an important gig, I'll just play as much as I can up until then, so I know that I'm going to be strong and powerful for that gig, confidence-wise as well. So. Practice-wise, I probably don't do as many sort of rudiments and theories I should, but now my practice regime consists of just playing as much as I can. So that can be scales and studies, but mostly it's just kind of getting my instrument out and just sort of just playing with kind of backing tracks, tapes, albums, that sort of thing. It varies a lot, but I try and get an hour to 2 hours a day. I think that's probably a realistic, truthful assessment, really. Yeah, it's always a challenge in a studio because horn parts are really difficult to write for, and usually the people that have kind of want you, they're not entirely sure how to kind of write for horns or things like that. So they kind of leave a lot of it to you sometimes to kind of come up with what works on your instrument. So it's always a challenge to get into the studio and work with someone who's never maybe worked with horns before, or something like that. So yeah, so it's always a challenge to kind of try and do what they want, because they've always got a sound in their head. They've heard horns on some kind of album or something like that, so you need to get out of them exactly what kind of sound that they're looking for and then recreate that. I can truthfully say, in a session environment, in a studio, I can't remember the last time I read a chart. It's all I think in a studio, I think your ear is much more important. I think it saves a lot of time if you're not buried in a part. If it is extremely complicated, then obviously you're going to have to write out a chart, and you have to have that skill there just in case somebody does pull out an extremely hard sort of tune. But again, truthfully, for some of the stuff that I've done, I can't remember the last time I pulled out a chart and asked me to read it. So yeah, it's not been extremely important for me, but I can read, so it is in my armory just in case I need it. So. Again, first of all, I'm kind of trying to do what I think the person sort of wants if I'm in a studio environment. But generally, I've listened to a lot of things that I like, R&B, jazz-wise, and blues and all that kind of stuff. So I'm playing what comes from me, really. Again, a truthful answer is probably there's not a lot going through my head, really. I'm just kind of working on sort of everything I've kind of done over the last since I was 7 years of age. It becomes sort of second nature, or it should do. So I'm trying not to think too much. Otherwise, you might overplay, and that's I think the worst thing you can do. Same again, really. If you kind of, if someone wants you to do a solo that's really high, really loud, that needs a lot of power, needs a lot of strength, you've got to have been playing up until the last week. So again, if you get into a session or whatever, you need to make sure that you've been playing a lot in order to get get those kind of high notes and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, again, it's not something I tend to think about too much. Again, I mean, funk is or funk music. I mean, if you say funk to me, I immediately think of things like Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament, Funkadelic, bands like that. So funk to me means old school, sort of James Brown sort of stuff like that. Yeah, that's what I think funk is. And funk's it's a vibe, it's a groove. It's about playing in the pocket, playing behind the beat. It's all about the groove. It's not about the notes you play. It's about how you play them. I think attitude is really important. I think a lot of people overlook attitude of players. I think Bristol is a great place for musicians, and more importantly, a great place for attitude. I've never been tempted to make a move to London or anything like that, because I think people's attitudes in this side of the pond is really great and really important. And if you're touring or anything like that, you've got to have a good attitude. You've got to be humble and just basically a sound sort of person, really, and be able to kind of blend with other people socially. So yeah, make sure you're not. Make sure you can sort of fit in with other people. No, that sounds rubbish. Session-wise, again, it's about attitude, and session playing is about touring and it's about recording. If you're touring with a band, you'll be playing with a band for an hour and a half for the night, and for the rest of the time you're on the bus or in your hotel, or you're socialising with them. You're in the green room or the dressing room or whatever. So you've got to be, you've got to be cool. You've got to be just easy to get along with, and I think that's really important. And again, in a studio, you've got to be able to do things in a limited number of takes. You've got to be able to do what the band member wants. I've been in so many different environments, from classical music to jazz to funk to R&B to indie rock, and you can't walk in with the attitude of this is how I play. This is what you get. You've got to be adaptable nowadays. You've got to be really adaptable. I think that's really important. If you can just play trad jazz, then you're not going to go very far. You need to be able to play a lot of different styles. So yeah, any aspiring session musician, you've got to listen to as much stuff as you possibly can, genre-wise, so then you can recreate that for the person in the studio.
That's brilliant, thank you. It's a pleasure working with you as always, Gary.
Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure. Thanks, man.
Thank you.